ביאור משנה ד', explanation for משנה ד'. משנה זו באה ללמדנו, this Mishnah comes to teach us, כיצד מודדים 2,000 אמה של תחום שבת? How do we measure the 2,000 אמה of תחום שבת, of the area outside of the city for שבת? אין מודדים את תחום השבת, we don't measure the תחום שבת, the area of שבת, אלא בחבל של 50 אמה. We only use a rope 50 אמה long. בחבל של פשטן, with a rope of flax, שמידת אורכו 50 אמה, that is 50 אמה long. לא פחות מ-50, we don't use less than 50, מפני שהמדידה נעשת בשני אנשים. Why not less than 50? Because we're measuring by using two people. אחד אוחז בראש החבל מכאן, one is holding the head of the rope from this side, והשני בקוצר מכאן, and the other one is holding the head of the rope on the other side. ואם החבל הוא קצר, and if the rope is short, הרי הוא נמתח על ידם יותר מדי, it's going to get stretched by them too much of doing it many times. ומידתו מתארכת, it's going to become longer. ונמצא מרבה את אורך התחום, and then you're going to overestimate the measurement. So not less than 50 אמה, because you, from stretching it so many times, it's going to become elongated the rope. ולא יותר, why not more than 50 אמה? You can use 2,000 אמה. Not more than 50 אמה, לפי שחבל ארוך מדי נותח כראוי, because if the rope is going to be too long, it won't be able to be tightened. ומידתו מתקצרת, it's going to have a dip in it. ונמצא ממעט את אורך התחום, and then you're going to have a shorter lengthwise. וכן אמרו בירושלמי, and this is what they say in the ירושלמי, לא פחות, not less, מפני שנמתח ונזכר, because it's going to get stretched, ולא יותר מפני שנקמץ ומפסיד. And not less, because it's going to become a little bit of a dip in it, and then you're going to have lesser of a measurement. ולא ימדוד אלא כנגד ליבו. And also when you measure it, you're going to hold the rope against your heart. כל אחד מהמודדים יוחז את ראש החבל כנגד ליבו. Each one of the ones who measure it will hold the rope against his heart. חכמים קבעו מקום לשים שם את ראש החבל. The sages established a place to put the head of the rope there, כדי שלא ייתן אחד מהמודדים כנגד צווארו, so that one of the people who makes the measurement is not going to put it against his neck, והאחד כנגד לבלב, and the other one against his feet. וכיוצא בזה, and similar this, and then it's going to be on an angle, ונמצא עמידה מתקצרת, and then the measurement is going to be too short, והתחום מתמעט, and you're going to have less than 2,000 אמה. ואין חוששים, and we're not worried, שמא המודדים אינם שווים בקומתם, that maybe the guys who measure it are not in the same length. שמן הסתם המודדים הם בני אדם בינוניים, because we assume that the guys who measure it are intermediary people. היה מודד חבל אחרי חבל, if a person was measuring rope after rope, 50 אמה and then another 50 אמה, והגיע לגיא, and he came to a valley, a ditch, או לגדר, או he came into a fence, כגון גן אבנים גבוה ומשופע. For example, a hill of stones which is high. מבליעו, he can swallow that area inside. מבליע את מדרון הגיא. He can swallow the area. In other words, he's going to go and measure it like the bird flies, and not have the rope go into the valley and out of the valley on the other side. שאין יורדים לתוכו ומודדים את שיפורו. You do not go into the valley and then measure the angle. אלא מודדים את רחבו משפה לשפה. You can go from one edge to the valley to the next edge of the valley. וכן בגדר מבליע את גובהו ואת שיפורו. And also with the fence, you are just not going to go into the fence and down from the other side. You're going to go above the fence. Like the bird flies, מבליע את גובהו ואת שיפורו. You're going to swallow the height. שאין מעלים עליו את החבל ומותחים אותו במשופע משני צדי הגדר. You're not going to put the rope on top of the fence and have it on a slope from both sides. אלא מגביהים את החבל, you're going to uplift the rope, ומודדים את עובי הגדר למעלה, and then you measure it from on top, like the bird flies. בגמרא מבואר, in the Gemara it explains, שמדובר כאן בכגון שהגיא אינו רחב 50 אמה. We're talking about one, that the crevice or the hill that we're measuring is not more than 50 אמה. שזה עומד על שפתו מכאן, because if it's less than 50 אמה, and the rope is 50 אמה long, one can stand on one side of the crevice and the other on the other side, ומותחים החבל מעל הגיא משפה לשפה, and they can measure from on top of the guy, from on top of the valley, from the top of the crevice, from one edge to the other edge. וחוזר למידתו, and then he returned to his measurement. What does that mean? בגמרא מדייקים כאן, in the Gemara they explain over here, שמשנתנו בא להשמיע, that our Mishnah comes to teach us, שאם היו מגדירים כנגד העיר, that if you measured out of the city limit, against the city, opposite the city, כגון לצד מזרח, for example to the east, והגיע לגיא רחב יותר מ-50 אמה, and you reached a crevice that is wider than 50 אמה, ואין החבל מספיק כדי להבליעו, and now the rope is not enough in order to swallow it. אבל אם ילכו לצד ימין או לצד שמאל שלו כנגד העיר, but if you're going to go north or south against the city, ימצאו את הגיא מתקצר. Over there, the crevice is less than 50 feet. ואפשר להבליעו שם, and over there you can swallow it. אף על פי שאותו מקום אינו כנגד העיר, even though it is not exactly opposite the city, it's a little bit northern or southern from the city, מכל מקום מותר ללך שם כדי להבליע את הגיא. Nevertheless, you're allowed to go over there in order to swallow this crevice. ואחר כך חוזרים לקו הקודם שכנגד העיר. And then you return to the same place you were, which is against the city. ומשלימי את מילת התחום, and then continue to measuring the area. הגיע להר, if he came to a mountain, וכן אם הגיע להר, מבליעו מבליע את שיפועו. He also takes long sticks, and he picks the rope from one side of the mountain to the other side of the mountain. כגון שמעמיד קלונס מצד זה של ההר, he takes a long stick from this side of the mountain, וקלונס מצד זה, and another stick from the other side, והחבל מתוח מראש הקלונס, and the rope is tight from one head of the stick to the other, מעל גבי ההר, from on top of that particular mountain. בגמרא אמרו, in the Gemara they explains, לא שנו אלא בהר המתלקט 10 טפחים מתוך 5 אמות. We're talking about a mountain that goes up 10 טפחים in 5 אמות, which means you walk 5 אמות this way, horizontally, and the mountain goes up 10 טפחים vertically. כלומר, שההולך על ההר 5 אמות, that if you walk 5 אמות on the mountain, אינו עולה אלא לגובה של 10 טפחים. He goes up to the height of 10 טפחים, which means a very low angle. If it's more than a particular angle, then you can't do that. אבל בהר המתלקט 10 בתוך 4, but if it goes 10 טפחים around the middle in 4 feet, if that the slope is very, very high, כלומר שהוא זקוף הרבה, it's very slopey, עומדו והולך לו, then he needs to actually measure it. שהואיל וקשה לבליעו על ידי קלונסאות, because since it's going to be hard to measure it by the sticks, וכיוצא בזה, קובעים את בעומד, then you have to estimate it. It's not going to be 100% accurate, we're going to learn later on how to do this estimation. ובלבד שלא יצא לחוץ לתחום. It says everything that we say that we can go to the north and we can go to the south of the city in order to measure the crevice. If the crevice opposite the city is more than 50 אמה, אם הגיא או ההר רחבים מאוד בתוך התחום, if the valley or the mountain are very wide opposite the city, עד שאי אפשר להבליעם בחבל של 50 אמה, that they are wider than 50 אמה, אבל מחוץ לתחום הם צרים, but from outside of the city limit they're narrow, אסור לו לצאת מחוץ לתחום. He's not allowed to go out of the city limit. In other words, he can only go 2,000 amma north of the city limit and 2,000 amma south of the city limit. He's not allowed to go out of that area. Gzera, this is a decree. Why he's not allowed to go? Shema yomru haroim. Maybe the people who are actually seeing these two guys measuring the city limits, shemidat atchum ba ad oto makom shelo sham, they're going to see them go out of the city limits and they're going to assume a person is allowed to walk over there. So this is just because of the decree. You're not allowed to, once you're measuring the area for the city, you're not allowed to go out of the area you're allowed to walk in. Im eino yachol lavlio. What happens if it's too steep or it's wider all the way around? It's a wide crevice, more than 50 amma, all the way north to south. כגון שהגיא או ההר בכל ערכו שבתוך התחום רחב ומ50 מה. So it says, בזה אמר רבי דוסטאי. In this, Rabbi Dustai tells us how to behave. Rabbi Dustai bar Rabbi Yanai, he's the son of Rabbi Yanai, and he said it to us, Mishum Rabbi Meir. And he says it in the name of Rabbi Meir. Shamati shemekadrim baharim. I heard that when it comes to the mountains, they're doing such a thing called mekadrim. What's mekadrim? Nokvim bahem. You hollow them out. You make a tunnel through the mountains. Klomar. In other words, we're not really going to make a tunnel. We estimate. כלומר, שרואים את הערים כאילו הם נקובים. We look at the mountains as if they have a tunnel in them. ומדידים את הקרקע שמתחתיהם. And then we measure the ground on this tunnel. בגמרא מבואר, in the Gemara it explains, how do you estimate in such a manner? שמודדים את ההר בחבל קצר של 4 אמות. It says, you need to take a short rope, only 4 אמות, והעומד בהר למטה אוחזו כנגד ליבו. The one who's standing on the mountain, in the bottom of the mountain, is holding it against his heart. והעומד למעלה נותנו כנגד רגליו. And the one who's standing on top of the slope, he's going to hold the rope against his feet, so that it's going to be straight. וכן מודדים את כל מדרון ההר, and this is you go back and forth and measure the entire slope. וכן עושים גם בגיא או בגדר, you do the same thing with a small mountain or a fence. על ידי מדידה זו מתמעטת מידת ההר בכל 4 אמות. In this way you measure it many times over the 4 אמות. שהרועד עומד למטה אינו מותח את החבל כנגד ליבו אלא כנגד רגליו. And it's not on a slope because you're only measuring it when it's completely horizontal. ונקטה משנה בזו אמר רבי דוסטאי, and it says, in this Rabbi Dustai said, why did it say in this Rabbi Dustai said? לומר, to tell you, שדווקא במדידת תחום שבת מקדרים בהרים. That specifically when it comes to Shabbat, when it's a mitzvah from the rabbis, there you do this trick with the 4 amot to go on the mountains. אבל לא במדידה שבניין עגלה ערופה, but in a case of an עגלה ערופה, עגלה ערופה is in a case where you find a dead body next to one of the cities. You have to measure from the closest city into that dead body. You have to measure which is the closest city, and the elders of the city have to go out to the place where the body was found, and they have to slaughter a calf over there, and they have to say that we did not send this man without any help. In other words, it's our responsibility because we are the closest one to this help, and it wasn't our responsibility that he died. So this is a gla rufa. When you measure that, who's the closest city, you cannot use this trick with the 4 amot. כשמודדים לידע איזו עיר הקרובה, when you measure which one is the closest city, אל החלל, to the dead person, ולא במדידת תחומם של ערי מקלט, also not when it comes to the cities of refuge, where is the city limit for the city of refuge, where the person who killed inadvertently is safe, מפני שמדידתם היא מן התורה, because all those measurements are not from the rabbi, they're from the Torah, and then, therefore you cannot estimate and you have to be exact.